But by right now, man, honestly, my job is just to beat whoever they put in front of me. I really don't care. I mean, to be honest, I don't feel like Canelo, if, I win the mandatory like I am, I feel like Canelo, he's not going to give me the opportunity anyways. I feel like he's probably just going to vacate the title or do something like that. I would love to fight Canelo. I would love to show the world that I am the best. But honestly, I don't think he's going to take the fight. We were never in talks before when I had the WBC title. We're never in talks to make the fight happen. He never reached out to me. He reached out to every other champion besides me. And I feel like if he, when he beats Billy Joe Sanders and then he goes and beat Caleb Plant, I feel like he's going to say that his work at super middleweight division was done. So, it doesn't matter to me. If it's Canelo, if it's Caleb Plant, if it's Charlo, Ronald Ellis, whoever, my job is to beat whoever, and I am going to beat whoever it is that they put in front of me.
So do you think that Canelo is avoiding you?
I don't know, man. He never mentions my name. He talks about everybody else except for me, But, some people want to say that I'm desperate for the fight. I'm not desperate for the fight. I'm not desperate for no money. I'm desperate to show the world that I am the best. I'm willing to fight whoever. I'll fight Berlanga. I'll fight Charlo. I'll fight Caleb Plant. I'll fight Canelo. I just want to show the world that I'm the best. I just want the opportunity to show the world I'm the best.
Do you think that stylistically you give him the most difficult challenge out there because you are tall, you have a good reach, you work behind the jab, you got a vicious right hand, you come forward, you're a big super middleweight. It's not like you are, a small super middleweight. You're a big super middleweight and you're young.
No, definitely. You see, there's a lot of similarities between me and Canelo. Body shots, uppercuts. The thing about me is I have a wicked variety of punches too. I can put my punches together as good as he can. And I have an amazing jab. You see when Kovalev fought Canelo in the beginning, Kovalev was hitting him with just a little stiff jab and Canelo was not able to get in. I could throw the jab. I could throw hard jabs all night. So I feel like I give him the best fight at anybody. And I feel like his team knows that too. So I feel like that's the reason why, they're kind of avoiding me. But, at the end of the day, if he does vacate his belt, he's just going to show everybody how afraid he is of me, and people can say whatever they want. People can say that I'm desperate, that Canelo is too experienced for this and that. Until he gets in the ring and show me, I feel like I'm the best in the world and I'll beat that guy.
So what did you think of his performance against Yildirim on Saturday night? I'm sure you watched it.
It was good. I take nothing away from him. And I never hate on Canelo. He's a great fighter. He looked good. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. The variety, body shots. I just felt like Yildirim, he was... what did he throw? Like 15 punches?
Yeah, something like
that. It was ridiculous, man. But I feel like it was just, anyways, he was, Yildirim is not at the level. He's not at the level. You see, he couldn't even beat Darrell, and I stopped Darrell. And you know what I mean? He was not going to compete with Canelo. But, it was a good fight. He did what he was supposed to do. He did good. I always give credit where credit is due.
So David Benavidez calls out everyone, including Canelo Alvarez, in which he stated, he truly believes Canelo Alvarez is going to continue to avoid him, even if he becomes his mandatory. And the fact that Canelo Alvarez never mentions his name as a potential opponent, which I completely agree. Forget about mentioning his name. Canelo Alvarez went even as far as claiming, I'm not going to fight Mexicans anymore, as soon as he came to the 168-pound division. Now, mind you, Canelo Alvarez fought Mexicans before, the likes of Chavez Jr., Lopez, who he made him move up 2 weight divisions and fought him, even Angulo. Then all of a sudden, as soon as Canelo moved up to a division where there is a dangerous, undefeated Mexican fighter, a champion in fact, David Benavidez, who is the youngest super middleweight champion of all time. Now Canelo Alvarez wants to announce he's no longer fighting Mexicans anymore. What a coincidence, especially knowing the rich history of Mexican legendary fighters going to war, the likes of Barrera, Morales, Marquez, so on and so forth. So the irony of Canelo now all of a sudden not being interested in fighting Mexicans. That's equivalence of the Lakers not wanting to play against Golden State because LeBron doesn't want to play against another team that's nearly a neighbor next to the Lakers when they both are the top teams. You think that's gonna fly with the NBA, but you best believe that flies in the sport of boxing, because the sport of boxing doesn't have a governing body to keep the sport structured and force the best to fight the best. Instead, Canelo Alvarez, who they label as pound for pound number one, old media that is, knowing the fact that Canelo Alvarez requested the WBC to order the fight between him and Akhi Yildirim for David Benavidez' WBC title that he lost on the scale, not in the ring, because David Benavidez is still undefeated. However, due to the pandemic protocols, David Benavidez miscalculated weight and he was stripped of his WBC title. Now keep in mind, this is not the first time David Benavidez called out Canelo Alvarez. When David Benavidez held the title, he called out Canelo Alvarez on more than one occasion, and Canelo never responded. He was never interested. However, as soon as David Benavidez lost the title, literally the next day, Canelo calls the WBC and requests to fight Akhi Yildirim, a fighter coming off a loss and 2-year layoff, for David Benavidez' WBC title. Now, for the people that's not too familiar with Akhi Yildirim, as you guys see on the screen, beside the fact that Akhi Yildirim was coming off a loss and a 2-year layoff, his fight before he lost was against a guy with 14 losses and 1 draw. And a fight before that, he fought a guy with 3 wins, 31 losses, and 3 draws. Let me repeat. He fought a guy with 3 wins, 31 losses, and 3 draws. That was against Jose Rodriguez. Let that sink in. This who Canelo Alvarez personally requested to fight for David Benavidez' WBC title, who also happened to be Canelo Alvarez' sparring partner. And old media had the audacity to paint the narrative leading up to this fight as if Canelo always fight the best, when even a fool can point out that Canelo Alvarez cherry picks the best. Canelo Alvarez leading up to the fight with Akhi Yildirim, old media kept labeling him as pound for pound number one, when in reality, he is pound for pound number one. Old media just left the cherry picker part out of the label. Canelo Alvarez is pound for pound number one cherry picker in the sport of boxing. Now that we all can agree with. Canelo Alvarez is Europe pound for pound number one, since he's on a Europe tour at the moment in time. His last 4 opponents are from Europe, and they all were coming off bad performances. For one, Kovalev was 1 punch removed from getting knocked out by Yard, in which Canelo Alvarez fought him a month and a half later with a hydration clause. Then you have Caleb Smith, where Canelo Alvarez sent him an offer 4 weeks before the fight. Caleb Smith also had a robbery decision against Ryder the fight before that. Then you obviously have Akhi Yildirim, who was coming off a loss, and now Billy Joe Saunders, in which when he fought on the YouTube undercard, Billy Joe Saunders was losing every single round to an unknown fighter until he got the stoppage. So you see the pattern is cherry picking over these European fighters. And that's a fact. Let's be clear. Do you guys recall any fighter in history that was labeled as pound for pound number one in his prime, and he fought an Akhi Yildirim top of an opponent for a world title? I'll wait. Please name me this fighter and who he fought. There is none. That's why I'm still waiting to this day. This is why this will be labeled as the cherry pick of the century. That Canelo had with Avni Yildirim. This fight was such a cherry pick that when Canelo requested the WBC president last year to order the fight between him and Avni Yildirim for David Benavidez' WBC vacant title, he also informed DAZN that's the fight he want next during the pandemic, in which DAZN respectfully rejected the fight on more than one occasion. However, Canelo pursued the Avni fight at all costs because supposedly he his own boss. He can fight whoever he wants to fight. He can cherry pick whoever he wants to cherry pick. That's when DAZN informed Canelo Alvarez of very bad news that he can't just cherry pick every single time since they paying him $33 million guaranteed every single time. Therefore, he have to have a premier fight, and he can't fight Avni Yildirim because that was considered a cherry pick. But surprisingly, Canelo Alvarez still pursued fighting Avni Yildirim, which ended up costing him his $365 million contract with DAZN, which is exactly why Canelo Alvarez went to court with DAZN, which they ended up resolving the issue outside of court. And that's how Canelo Alvarez became a free agent. Therefore, this is why this will be labeled as the cherry pick of the century, because this cherry pick cost Canelo Alvarez his $365 million contract with DAZN. And would you guys believe Canelo still pursued the Avni fight after that, and he still fought him? However, to save face, the WBC allowed Canelo Alvarez to fight for the WBC vacant title of David Benavidez against Callum Smith, when both Canelo and Callum Smith were nowhere on the rankings. So how the hell they fought for the vacant title when Callum Smith had nothing to do with the WBC belt? Matter of fact, he was the WBA super champion. Then the WBC mandated Canelo Alvarez to fight Avni Yildirim since he fought for a vacant title. So again, to all of the decafs and even old media, including the decafs wizards themselves, if you guys are trying to justify Canelo cherry picking Avni because it was his mandatory, then how come Canelo did not fight his mandatory when it was Jamal Charlo at 160? Therefore, to all of the Canelo fans in the comment section, if you guys don't answer this question, however, you calling me all type of names because you guys are talking emotionally and I'm talking factually. And by doing so, you decafs are co-signing that Canelo Alvarez is the cherry picking king in the sport of boxing, the pound for pound cherry picking king. With all of the facts being stated, this is what Canelo Alvarez have always done, is maneuver around the best competition in every single division he campaigned in. At 154, he avoided Jamal Charlo, which caused Golden Boy to lose Jamal, since Golden Boy promised Jamal the Canelo fight in Texas, but Canelo wanted to cherry pick Cricklin, who was coming off almost a 2-year layoff and a knockout loss not too long before then. Then Canelo Alvarez, he treated Andrade just like Canelo is treating Benavidez today. When Andrade was the WBO champion, calling the non-champion Canelo at the time out, Canelo never responded. As soon as Andrade vacated the belt, that's when Canelo Alvarez knocked on the WBO door to fight one of the Smith brothers for the vacant belt, just like he fought the older Smith brother for Benavidez belt. Then obviously at 160, Canelo pretty much surrendered his belt and waved the white flag to Charlo when Charlo was his mandatory. And now it's Benavidez's turn at 168. So this is a pattern of the cherry picker of the century, Canelo Alvarez. Like I said before, just like he ordered witness protection on Jamal Charlo by requesting the NBF franchise witness protection, in which he's the pioneer of, most likely he will do the same thing to David Benavidez when David Benavidez becomes his mandatory. The WBC is ordering an eliminator for David Benavidez when he was the former champion that never lost. That makes no sense. But Avini gets a shot right away. This was always part of Canelo Alvarez's strategic plan. At 160, Canelo Alvarez stated that his dream is to become undisputed and be the first middleweight undisputed champion from Mexico. All of a sudden, when the competition got too real, when Charlo became his mandatory and Andrade became the WBO champion, then Canelo changed his plan, the NBF plan. Do you guys know the last time Canelo Alvarez fought an undefeated black fighter was 8 years ago when he lost to Floyd Mayweather, and before then it was 9 years ago against Trout. 9 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, we in 2021, and Canelo still avoiding Charlo, Andrade, and now Benavidez to this day. Canelo Alvarez never wanted to be undisputed at 168 until he peeped the landscape. The moment David Benavidez lost his belt, that's the moment Canelo activated his new plan to become undisputed at 168, since the division is full of European fighters, thanks to David Benavidez losing his belt on the scale. So Canelo Alvarez capitalized on the moment. Like I said, no one moves more strategic than Canelo. Canelo even moves more strategically than 6ix9ine do. Furthermore, now Canelo Alvarez fans want to attack David Benavidez for wanting to fight Canelo Alvarez, calling him desperate in the process. And that's why you hear David Benavidez say, "I'm not desperate. I just want to prove myself." See, only in the sport of boxing, where the champion of the people, the fighter that wants to fight everyone to prove himself, they call that desperate. Then turn around and embrace Canelo Alvarez, who is the cherry-picking king. Boxing is the only emotionally driven sport where you have fans calling a fighter that wants to prove himself and fight the best in order to achieve greatness. They call that desperate. Canelo fans even say in the comment section, David Benavidez is not Mexican just because he want to fight Canelo Alvarez. I didn't hear any of the Canelo fans call David Benavidez desperate when he was calling out Jamal Charlo. And for the people that say David Benavidez needs to prove himself and earn a Canelo fight, well, please tell me and inform me, what did Avini Yildirim prove to fight Canelo Alvarez? David Benavidez is already proven. He a two-time world champion, the youngest 168-pounder champion of all time. On top of all of that, he's undefeated. But Avini earned it. However, David Benavidez haven't. We know what time it is. That's the definition of a decaf. See, it's one thing if David Benavidez is only calling out Canelo Alvarez. However, David Benavidez is literally calling out everyone. Berlanga, Caleb Plant, Canelo, and even the guy that have Canelo shook and scared to look his way, Jamal Charlo. David Benavidez is applying all type of pressure to make Jamal Charlo fight him. The same man Canelo is desperately ducking is the same man David Benavidez is desperately trying to fight. But it's all good and dandy. David Benavidez, he can call out everyone, but as soon as he mentions Canelo, that's when he F's up, right? Nah, I don't think so. Because one thing for sure and two things for certain, David Benavidez is the boogeyman at 168, and Canelo has to see him. If Canelo wants to prove he's the best at 168, he has to fight the best 168 pounder at the moment in time, which is David Benavidez. But again, they embrace Canelo ducking tactics, who's delivering us shitty fights. On the other hand, they don't appreciate and embrace David Benavidez as much as he should be embraced for wanting to fight the best, win or lose. Especially at a time where ducking is becoming a trend. With the facts being laid out, I really hope David Benavidez keep applying pressure on everybody, especially on Canelo. Since these decafs wants to act like he's doing something wrong for wanting to deliver the boxing fans the best fights. And when it comes to the Trollo call out, that is my next video I'm working on. So subscribe below, click on the notification bell, and to be continued on the next episode of Akhi TV. Peace and we out here.